This is Anna Pacheco, SantaFe101.com. My guest today is Joaquin Karcher, and he is with Zero E Designs up in Taos, New Mexico. Joaquin, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you have my
Oh, good.
permission.
Well, I guess the first thing I was going to ask you is, I like your interesting background. I see some lighting, and I see a few different computer screens. Where are you Where are you right now?
I'm in my studio. My studio is in Taos, and I'm an architectural designer.
And
Um,
you have more than one computer. So do you have a staff? Do you have more than one person working with you, or why do you need more than one computer screen?
you can never have enough computer screens if you do digital design.
Really?
So yeah, I'm actually working with a group of people. I have a group that of freelancers that I work with. They are mechanical engineers, other architects, and designers. And so we're basically a group that is working around zero energy homes.
Okay, good. And I can hear you have an accent there. Can you tell me where you're originally from?
I'm originally from Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I've
how long
been
have you been in Taos?
about 30 years.
Oh, you've been here a while.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested because Santa Fe is my hometown. What gets people to New Mexico? What got you to Taos, New Mexico?
That's a long story. It's actually an interesting story because when I was an architect student in Hamburg in Germany in the 80s, my generation of young students was fascinated with what was going on at the time in the southwest of the United States, which was the passive solar Adobe movement. And so I wanted to come here and be part of that movement. When I finally got here, Ronald Reagan on his first day of office had just taken the solar panels off the White House roof. And that set the stage for what was supposed to come in terms of renewable energy, which was not much progress, unfortunately. So I had to go back. I went back to Germany and found out that they are actually doing 90% efficiencies, which was even for the passive solar world here in the States, unimaginable scale. And so I researched that new building science-based concept and brought it back to the United States. And that was about now 15 years ago. And ever since, we have been implementing this new approach and concept in Taos and in Santa Fe.
Interesting. So back in the 1980s, when the solar Adobe movement that was here in New Mexico, to your knowledge, was this taking place anywhere else in the world, or was it just in New Mexico?
At that time, it was actually the very beginning of the green building movement, and it wasn't even called that way. The terminology green came in very much later. It was actually called eco-design or ecological construction. It was a broader approach. It had to do with healthy and natural building materials and so forth, and solar energy. But later, when it became clear that climate change is actually an emergency, with James Hansen testifying in front of Congress several times, telling how dire the situation is and how urgent this is, and then Ed Masria, a Santa Fe-based architect who was a legend actually in the passive solar Adobe movement, who then became an advocate for energy efficiency in a general sense, on a political level, in terms of code changes and so forth. He founded an organization that is based in Santa Fe. It's called Architecture 2030. And he put out the challenge to the architecture and mechanical engineering community to achieve carbon neutral buildings by 2030. And that's 9 years away. So in 9 years, according to this target, we have to be able to realize buildings that are carbon neutral and zero energy. And that's what we've been doing. We can do this today, and that's the focus of my work.
So going back to my original question then, did this green building, did this movement originate in Taos, New Mexico? Or in the
No.
in the
You
US?
mean the passive solar adobe movement?
The passive solar, but you were saying that it was kind of that movement was just getting started in the 80s. Did it originate in New Mexico?
It did. It
Okay.
did.
Well, that's
Yes,
another
it
kudos
did.
to my home state. Look at that.
Absolutely. And Santa Fe was kind of the epicenter of it.
Wow.
Yes.
And so then how did people like in Germany hear about this? I mean,
it was published in literature. Passive solar adobe architecture was huge in the area. I mean, it's like the new kid on the block, you know, when something, a whole new movement gets started. At the time in Germany, the Green Party evolved, which is now almost in power. They're probably going to be a part of the government when the new elections happen in the fall. So this was the rise. I mean, this was basically the very beginning over 30 years ago.
And so you were saying that, but then in Germany, basically they kind of, they perfected this whole solar technique or something?
No, they did not. They took an entirely different approach, actually, and that's what was so interesting. Here in the Southwest, we have basically built with adobe, which is a thermal mass material, and we combined that with glazing, with south-facing windows, basically. And the theory is that the free heat from the sun that is coming in gets stored in the heavy mass material in the adobes. And at night, when temperatures drop, the walls release that energy back into the room, and it kind of evens the amplitude between the hot days and cold nights out. And so we were always banking on maximizing this free heat. You know, when you think about Earth ships, for example, that we have here in Taos, Mike Reynolds Earth ships, they have even slanted glass and a huge surface of glass facing south. But there are limits to that. And there's also drawbacks to that, which is large temperature swings indoors. So what the Germans did differently is that they were not interested in glazing, being south facing and maximizing the free heat. They were interested they were basically interested in curbing heat losses by any means. And basically they come up with a concept that is fairly complex, but in simple terms, I would say we build homes now like a thermos that prevents heat from even leaving the building. So if no heat is leaving the building, then you have nothing to replace.
And so the name of your company is Zero E Design. So it is E is for emissions and for energy?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect, perfect. And so I know the Germans, I mean, I saw this special once. There's some place in Germany where there's all these windmills in the ocean, and they're like, they actually, all that energy from that actually provides energy for an entire city in Germany. I don't know, you probably are familiar with this. So it sounds like Germany's really up on that whole area. So you came back to Taos and you've been working on that. But certainly, I mean, you could have gone to Santa Fe, you could have gone to Arizona, you could, you know, there are other sunny places here in the Southwest. What has kept you in Taos, New Mexico?
Well, I mean, I like the Taos community. It's a very particular community. You know, there are a lot. I mean, it's kind of similar actually to Santa Fe in a lot of ways, obviously. But I like the people here. I like the ruralness I like the mountain, the outdoors, and the eccentric people that we have here. People that kind of don't fit in anywhere else. And I'm probably part of that.
Oh, good. Well, that's what they used to call, that's why they called Santa Fe the city different, because people from all over, and they didn't fit in other places, but everybody kind of fits in Santa Fe. So let's talk a little bit. I love that idea of a thermos, like a thermosed home. So tell me, so here, at least in Santa Fe, when I was growing up here, and even today, like my house does not have central air conditioning because it cools off in the evenings and things. How do you, I get the whole thing about how you can heat a home there, but how do you keep it cool with this concept that you do in designing homes?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about a thermos, then it becomes clear that the envelope of the building has to be what we call super insulated. That means there are much, much higher levels of insulation, 3 to 5 times more than what code prescribes. And so the wisdom is that what's good against cold is good against heat. So it fights the heat as much as it fights the cold.
Okay. And what type of insulation are you using these days?
Mostly cellulose, which is recycled newspaper, blown in recycled newspaper. We keep the newspaper out of the waste stream and upcycle it to a wonderful insulation material.
And where does that process take place? Where do you, is there like
all around the countries, there's factories that produce or recycle newspaper and shred it in like tiny little pieces. It looks like wool when you actually grab into the bag and pull out a handful of it. And it gets delivered in bags, and the bags get opened, it gets filled into a hopper. The hopper loosens up the bale so that everything is nice and fluffy. And then it gets with a hose and like a vacuum, a hose gets filled into wall cavities. Instead of fiberglass, we use cellulose. It's a much better insulator, packs tightly around plumbing and electrical wire and so forth. And it's just a super green building material.
It sounds like that's a way to recycle the newspapers. Yeah. And then are you still working with Adobe?
Barely, actually. What we use a lot is mud plaster. We on the interior, because of the benefits of the indoor air quality. Mud plaster has the ability to absorb large amounts of moisture because it's the driest building material on the planet. So any moisture that there is gets absorbed into the mud, and then it releases it as humidity levels drop again. And so it's kind of a natural humidity balancer, you can say. So I like mud plaster a lot.
And so when you say mud plaster, is it just that, is it like a special mixture, or you just go outside and wet some dirt and mix it up and there's your mud?
Basically just go outside and wet the dirt and there's your mud. I mean, really? it's mud, sand and water and straw. Double chopped.
That's what the Adobe was made of in the old days.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's what the pueblos are plastered with. That's the old and awesome plaster that we have here in New Mexico.
Okay. And so how large is your firm? How many designers do you have working with you? Because I see several of those computers. How many people are working on a project at a time? From the design.
It really depends on how many projects we have on the table. I work with 2 other architects, but we work remotely. We don't work in the office.
Okay.
One is in San Francisco, the other one is in Santa Fe. So we work depending on the projects and the workload and which team we're going to put together on which project and so forth.
And so how do you market yourself? Do you get information out there that you're a totally green builder, or how do people get to know about you and what you provide versus some of the other builders in the Taos area?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of fair amount of presentations when I have the time to the public. I also get interviews in newspapers. I just had an interview actually in the Taos News, in the tempo of the Taos News, talking about a particular project that we're involved with right now, which is very interesting, and word of mouth, happy clients. That's the best advertising.
So tell me, what is the current project that you're working on that's interesting in Taos?
So that is a project that has been started by a gentleman who is a founding member of an old group here in Taos. It's called Renewable Taos. They are mostly retired engineers. And he is also on the board of our utility company, Kit Carson Electric, and he's pushing for solar. Right now, Kit Carson Electric is building a 34 megawatt system by the Taos Airport, a PV system, a photovoltaic system. And there are already numerous smaller PV systems, arrays installed around our service area.
Excuse me, what's a PV system?
It's a large array of solar panels.
Okay.
A solar farm, basically.
Okay.
So there's a large one going in now by the airport. And when that comes online, which is going to be, but it's already been built. It's already under construction. When that comes online by the end of the year, our entire service area will be 100% daytime solar.
I mean, the airport, everything, like the people,
Everything.
like the air traffic
Everything.
control people will be relying on solar energy?
Yes.
That is cool.
Our need, the entire Kit Carson Electric service area will be supplied by 100% daytime solar. So now we are night peakers. Other than Albuquerque, our daytime peakers because they have a cooling load. We don't have that. So when they turn on all their coolers in the middle of summertime, that's when they need power. This group, the Renewable Taos, is also working with Kit Carson to bring in what's called the Lucky Corridor line. That's a power line that is coming in from eastern New Mexico, from Springer. And they have wind farms there. And when that line is installed, is finished, then they will provide our nighttime energy use. And so at that case, our entire area would basically be 100% renewable energy, 70 to 100% renewable energy. That's what they're talking about.
And then what is the time frame for that?
There's no real time frame for the Lucky Corridor line yet, but they're working on it, and it's very realistic. But I don't know I think they're talking about within the next 3 years.
And so Taos would actually be within, give or take,
yeah.
Taos could become like independent of fossil fuel energy in the next 3 years?
Yes, this is all part of what we call the energy transition to transition away from fossil fuels and transition away from fossil fuels and to renewable energy. So in that conversation, our power company, of course, is interested in new clients because they lost their largest client, which was the Molycorp mine in Cuesta. And they are looking at EVs, electric vehicles, and they're looking at all electric homes. And this Dolan Street project is going to be a model for clean living, affordable clean living, because we want to keep those. They're smaller, but super efficient and all electric. And if you buy into one of those units, then you have to have an electric vehicle as well. So it's going to be a model to show that zero energy, zero emission living, heating, cooling, and transportation is achievable and available to a fireman or policeman here in Taos.
So it sounds like Taos is it's futuristic in the sense it really shouldn't be futuristic, but because the rest of the country is lagging behind and still kind of stuck in that whole fossil fuel mentality, it gives a feel that Taos is certainly futuristic, and with people like you there. Let me just ask you, so if somebody's watching this video and they're like, you know what, I'm definitely moving to Taos and I want this guy to design my house, what is the time frame? Like I guess I take it you work with contractors and people out there that once you get the design, you ring up the XYZ company and they're the ones who do all the brick and mortar stuff.
Yeah.
What is the time frame from like first contacting you to actually having the reality of being in their own energy efficient home?
It's probably a full year for design and construction. That's from start to finish.
And then what would the cost of something like for an average, say, 2,000 square foot house, or what is the square footage a house like that versus like a traditional home being built.
Right. So the Dolan Street projects, the affordable projects, they're actually smaller. They are 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, between 1,000 and 1,300. And they're very smartly designed. There are no wasted spaces and they don't feel small at all. You come in and you have tall ceilings and you have long view length and you actually feel like you're in a much bigger space. And the construction cost right now, it's kind of really hard to say, because due to the pandemic, the construction costs are out of control. I mean,
well,
totally
I know that
volatile.
wood has gone, it's like 200% higher, but is there just like, so let's not talk about this special project you're working on, but like a normal home, like if somebody was coming out here from San Francisco, somewhere from one of the coastal cities, they're a professional couple, they have a little bit of money behind them. What would be just like an idea of, like, would it be 400,000, 500,000, just to kind of an idea? No one's going to
say, I would say for a 2,000 square foot home, at mid-level, mid-range, basically home, I would say about 500,000.
Okay, that's within, that's not unreasonable.
We actually want to be able to say that we can build to that high quality, to that high efficiency for the same price as conventional construction.
Well, that sounds very good. Well, we're at the end of the interview, but I just want to say that, I've had a lot of interesting interviews up in Taos with builders and designers. And so it does sound like that Taos is kind of leading the pack here, at least in New Mexico and perhaps in the country. What would you say? Would you like to take some bragging rights and say that's true?
I think that we're definitely on the forefront, working on the forefront. I just wish there would be more people, working, pushing the envelope. But yeah, I think it's true, and we actually have a history in sustainable construction, starting from the Pueblo 1,000 years ago to the passive solar Adobe movement, Mike Reynolds, and so forth, and now the new ultra efficient homes, zero energy homes. So it's a long tradition that we have here in Taos, and we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Well, I like that. Well, listen, I want to thank you again for the interview, and we'll stay in touch. How's that?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Bye now.